The house, as you said, belongs to Annie Guthrie and her husband, but it has been empty for the last several days with only security guards parked outside, and they remain here tonight. Now, the purpose of their presence here this evening, the Sheriff's Department telling NBC News they are continuing to conduct follow-ups in the investigation into the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie.
Picture a pool of blood drying on a silent Arizona porch, and lying right next to it, a tossed-aside bottle of heart medication. Nancy Guthrie is 84, and those pills aren't just medicine. They are her lifeline. Think about it for a second. Any abductor savvy enough to bypass a security alarm knows a dead hostage pays exactly $0. Leaving those meds behind is practically signing her death warrant. That contradiction begs a haunting question. Was this actually a kidnapping or a sloppy stage play designed to cover up a crime that ended right there on her doorstep? To get to the bottom of this, I spent hours combing through every single page of the Pima County search warrants. I cross-referenced the raw security footage with digital location data to build a map of the actual timeline. What I found buried deep in those files is a dark reality that looks nothing like the clean, sanitized version the officials are spinning. So, before we even start breaking down the forensics or squinting at that grainy video, we need to step back and examine the motive. Most folks want to jump right to the horror, but the why is always hidden in the home's foundation. Nancy Guthrie didn't just wind up in Tucson by accident. She moved out to the desert specifically to be near her daughter Annie and her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni. On the surface, it looks like a wholesome family story. We are talking about a group of people with zero history of violence. Not a single 911 call was ever logged at that address, no messy court fights, no public drama, and no neighbors hearing strange noises in the dead of night. It looked like the perfect retirement setup for an 84-year-old woman. But as anyone who's lived in a tight-knit community knows, silence doesn't always mean everything is okay. Sometimes, silence is just a very expensive cover-up. We need to talk about the cash, because in cases like this, the money talks when the people won't. Nancy lived in a stunning adobe-style home tucked away in the Catalina Foothills. If you know anything about Tucson real estate, you know that's where the elite park their money. We're talking panoramic mountain views and infinity pools. Local market experts estimate Nancy's property is worth at least $2 million. Now, let's hit pause and do the math. If you split that $2 million asset between her 3 kids, each branch of the family stands to walk away with nearly $700,000. The thing is, $700 grand is a lot of cash to almost anyone, but it's an absolute fortune to someone living on an educator's salary. Tomas had spent years grinding in academia and teaching. It's a respected life, sure, but rarely a wealthy one. At the same time, we have to look at the reality of Nancy's health. She was 84. She had a pacemaker and a laundry list of prescriptions, which means that while the love might have been there, the burden was, too. Constant medical checkups, the looming threat of expensive nursing home care, and the daily grind of watching over an elderly parent can breed a very specific kind of resentment. It's a slow-burning fire most families never discuss. What I found was that while the world saw a grandmother enjoying her golden years, there might have been a very different conversation going on behind closed doors. Maybe someone was staring at the rising cost of healthcare and the stagnant balance of their own bank account. In other words, that house in the hills wasn't just a home anymore. It was a massive, untapped life insurance policy just waiting to be cashed out, which tells us the opportunity was there, and the motive definitely was, too. You see, the problem with a $2 million inheritance is that it only becomes real once the owner is gone. And for someone struggling to make ends meet, waiting can start to feel like an eternity. This is crucial because we have to ask ourselves, are we looking at a tragic disappearance or a calculated financial power move? At this point, the total lack of conflict in the official records actually starts to look suspicious. How can a family be that squeaky clean? From there, I started thinking about the psychological toll of caregiving. It's a heavy load to carry, and sometimes people just want to be free of it, especially if there's a massive payday waiting on the other side. The reason this matters is that it flips how we view every single interaction from that final night. Was it a loving dinner, or was it a final inspection? Now, there is one particular detail here that truly bothers me. See, while Savannah was out stacking her cash, the relatives back in Tucson were stuck doing the grunt work, handling doctor visits, and managing everyday care. Imbalances like that create deep resentment, leading straight to this shocking realization. Is the stress of money and a $2 million payout enough to turn someone into a murderer? Let me know what you think in the comments. The events that followed shift this case from a sad loss into something downright terrifying. Let's carefully retrace the last few hours of January 30th. On the surface, nothing looked out of place. Tommaso Cioni gave Nancy a ride back after their meal. By 9:48 that night, he pulled into her silent driveway up in the Catalina Foothills. He pulled into the garage, and for a brief second, that home felt like a safe haven. 2 minutes pass. At 9:50 p.m., the garage shuts, and Tommaso heads out. On paper, Nancy Guthrie was secure inside, cut off from outside dangers. However, that is exactly where things stop adding up. Had this been some random stalker or a hired gun trailing them from dinner, they would have made their move right then and there. That is how these attacks typically play out. Attackers exploit that transition period when doors unlock or lights dim. But the digital logs tell a different story. The place remained completely quiet for almost 4 hours. Her ring cam was live, sensors were armed, and not a single thing stirred. Meanwhile, the desert air was chilling rapidly, dipping near freezing temps. Here is the kicker. The alarm system stayed active until 1:47 a.m. on February 1st. Let that sink in. We are talking about a huge delay of 3 hours and 57 minutes. Not until almost 2 in the morning did a masked person show up on the porch to slice the camera wire. The thing that really stood out to me was just how insanely patient that is. Why would a random stranger hide in the freezing dark for 4 hours after the coast was essentially clear? A stalker waiting that long defies logic, especially when the target was most exposed right when Tommaso left. Why hold off until the middle of the night to approach the door? This 4-hour gap is crucial because it completely reshapes who we should be looking at. Basically, this wasn't about seizing a moment, it was about precise scheduling. Check the map 4 hours gives you plenty of time to drive clear across the city, head home, swap into black gear, pick up a backpack, and come back without triggering any alarms. This implies the individual who cut the feed at 1:47 a.m. wasn't necessarily lurking in the shrubbery. It could easily be a person who was present hours before, an individual who knew the home's quiet hours and had a solid reason to be driving that night. That detail matters because it suggests a scary amount of planning. For a stranger, hanging around that long is a massive gamble. Each passing second increases the chance a neighbor peeks out or a patrol car drives past. However, if you know the resident's routine, that 4-hour block isn't downtime. It is a strategic opportunity. You head back, set up your cover story, and wait for the suburb to go completely dark. Then you return to complete the mission. This proves the perpetrator wasn't just fortunate. They were methodical. They knew the floor plan. They understood the surveillance setup. Now, we need to question the digital evidence. Did the indoor motion detectors pick anything up in that 4-hour span? Police have kept their lips sealed on that specific point. We do know, however, that the stillness broke at 1:47. That is when the mask was donned, and Nancy's world went black. The mystery isn't just about identity anymore. It is about their location during that long stretch between 9:50 and 1:47. Unlocking that time frame is the key to solving this case. We have to uncover the reality. Now we need to scrutinize the attacker's actual methods that evening. Upon reaching the Catalina Foothills estate, detectives instantly spotted something off about the home's exterior. Zero evidence of a break-in existed. The glass panes were completely untouched. No wood splinters on the door jambs, and the deadbolts were in perfect condition. This implies Nancy's abductor held a key, had the passcodes, or was a friend she felt safe letting inside at that late hour. It suggests the situation went south before she even stepped off her land. The alleged perfect scheme crumbled instantly. Whoever it was completely lost their cool right there on the front step. Any idea of a calm meeting evaporates when you check the floor. Detectives discovered a puddle of blood right on the entryway concrete. A fight broke out right at her front door. Where there is blood, there is violence, and violence brings sheer panic. But the forensic timeline reveals an even creepier detail. Nancy relied on an implanted pacemaker to keep her heart beating rhythmically. These modern devices are high-tech marvels, constantly beaming data wirelessly straight to an app on a smartphone. Police pulled those digital records, and the story they tell is absolutely horrifying. At exactly 2:28 a.m., the link between her phone app and the device in her chest was severed. Bluetooth range is short, so we know that is the precise second her body was moved away from the phone. The intruder dragged her out into the freezing desert night, but he left her phone sitting right there inside the house. Leaving the phone was weird, but leaving her daily meds behind? That is a whole lot worse. We are talking about an 84-year-old lady with severe heart issues here. Those pill bottles on the counter were her lifeline. Now, consider how a standard ransom plot usually works. Say you are a crook trying to squeeze $2 million out of a rich family. That victim is your golden goose, your only bargaining chip. Any halfway smart abductor knows you have to bring the heart meds, or the victim dies. If the victim croaks, you cannot provide proof of life. And without that proof, you are not seeing a single penny. Abandoning those pills is a rookie error, which tells me this was not done by a pro at all. Leaving the meds proves the abductor could not care less whether she survived or perished. Honestly, they probably knew she was already gone. Put the left-behind pills together with the fresh blood on the patio, and it looks grim. We are likely seeing a staged kidnapping gone wrong. Someone showed up, and things got physical right there in the entryway. Could have been a fight that got out of hand or a direct attack. You shove an 84-year-old, and bad things happen. She likely slammed onto the ground hard enough to draw blood. Her weak heart could have stopped right then. With a body on the porch, the guy totally freaked out. You cannot just leave a corpse out front and expect to walk free. So, he pivoted. The abduction was just a smokescreen, a frantic move to move the remains and give a reason for her disappearance. They masked up, cut the cameras way too late, and hauled her off. They spun a yarn about a masked bandit to hide a domestic killing. Just a magic trick to baffle the cops. The clues point to a fatal accident or a moment of anger that went south fast. A legit kidnapper would not ditch the one thing keeping their ticket to a payout breathing. When you eye the forgotten pills and the bloodstains at the entry, step into a detective's shoes for a second. Do you buy the ransom story, or does this look like murder and a dump job? Then, following days of dead silence and crazy rumors, the FBI put out a specific description of the masked guy seen on the surveillance feed. The figure who approached the porch and cut the feed at 1:47 a.m. was not just a shadow anymore. Experts used the video to size him up against the home's doorframe. They stated the John Doe was a guy standing roughly 5'9" to 5'10". He was described as having an average build, not a bodybuilder, but fit enough to do some heavy lifting. For a second, that description seemed way too basic to do any good. Thousands of guys in Arizona matched those exact height and weight specs. At first, it looked like a brick wall for the cops trying to crack this case. But then, police released a key detail that flipped the whole investigation on its head. They shared a sharp photo of the backpack he was carrying. A black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiking bag. We are not talking about a book bag or a work briefcase here. This is specialized gear built for hauling heavy stuff over rough ground. It is the type of pack used by folks who spend their free time hiking the backcountry or scaling rocky paths. Why drag a hardcore survival ruck into a posh neighborhood for a crime like this? That one specific gear choice instantly shrank the list of potential perps from your average Joe to somebody who knows their way around the brutal wild. And that's the snag I just can't get over. When you layer that FBI profile over Tommaso Cioni, the overlap is practically a horror story. Tommaso fits the bill to a T, standing somewhere between 5'9" and 5'10", rocking the exact same build and stance. His frame is a dead ringer for the masked figure in that security footage. On top of that, Tommaso makes his home up in the rugged terrain of Tucson. Everyone knows he's an outdoorsy guy who has the desert landscape around the city memorized. If you needed to make a body vanish into the massive, rocky sprawl of the Arizona Badlands, a local trekker would know exactly where to dump it. They'd know the deer trails, the washouts, and the desolate spots cops wouldn't dream of checking. And if the height, the build, and the trail pack weren't enough to make you stop cold, there's one more killer detail buried in that video. Take that high-res still from the cops, zoom all the way in on the guy's face, and you catch a glimpse of something under the ski mask. The fabric is pulled taut over his features. And right there, above the upper lip, is a dark, telltale smudge. It's the distinct impression of a thick mustache pushing against the knit. Now, pull up any shot of Tommaso Cioni online. Guy sports a heavy, dark stash. The physical match stops being a coincidence pretty fast. It's like looking at a mirror image, snapped in the pitch black. When you fit all these pieces together, the picture is impossible to ignore. You've got a suspect with the son-in-law's exact height and build. You've got a suspect lugging a specialized 25-liter trail pack, dead-on gear for a guy living in the Tucson mountains. And you've got the faint, undeniable shadow of a mustache under a winter mask. You have to run the numbers on this one. What are the chances some random violent drifter with these exact specs just happened to hit this specific house on this specific night? Height checks out. Backpack checks out. Mustache checks out. Is this the world's worst run of bad luck? Or did the killer just show his hand? Now, if you flip on the news during the first 2 weeks of this mess, you'll catch a very specific story being spun by the brass. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos has been hitting the podiums, staring down the lens, and going to bat for the family. He's been tearing into indie journalists and networks, calling their coverage reckless and demanding they quit flinging mud at the daughter and son-in-law. To your average viewer on the couch, the word from the police is loud and clear. Tommaso Cioni and his wife are victims here. They're playing ball with the investigation, and they are absolutely not on the suspect list for this nightmare abduction. The sheriff is basically playing bodyguard, trying to smother the public heat and steer eyes back to the mystery man with the backpack. This PR move is built to show total solidarity between the detectives and the grieving family. It sells the idea that everyone's on the same team, working to get a missing grandma back home. But anyone who follows true crime knows the golden rule. Ignore what the cops say at the mic. Watch what they do when the lights go out. Let's crack open the search warrants filed at the courthouse. While the sheriff was busy polishing Tommaso Cioni's halo on national TV, his own detectives were quietly standing before a judge, swearing they had probable cause to toss that very same house. Judges don't sign warrants for a friendly chat. Those detectives went in and stripped the place of personal electronics. They grabbed the cell phones, they seized the computers, and they bagged the hard drives. They're hunting for scrubbed texts, buried financial trails, and hidden location pings. They want to know exactly who Tommaso was chatting up during those 4 dark hours. They want a map of every digital footprint he left that night. And then we hit the most chilling detail yet. While investigators were ripping the house apart inside, they called for a heavy-duty industrial vacuum truck to back straight onto the lawn, pop the lid on the property's underground septic tank, and suck every last bit of sludge out of the ground. Let's be real. You don't drain a sewage tank expecting to find an 84-year-old hostage alive and well. You aren't checking a sewer for a rescue victim. You only take a step that drastic and nasty because you're hunting for evidence someone desperately tried to flush and destroy. You do something like that to recover a kill weapon. You do it to find a smashed-up cell phone or shredded clothes drenched in human blood. Or, in the worst-case scenario, you do it because you're looking for severed body parts buried deep below the surface. Taking this specific action steps way over the line for a standard missing persons case. It flips the script entirely, turning a frantic rescue mission into a grim recovery job. This aggressive, invasive search totally contradicts the reassuring nonsense the sheriff has been feeding the public. You just don't go destroying a grieving family's plumbing unless you've privately marked them as your top suspect. The authorities are playing a high-stakes game of psychological chess here. They're grinning for the cameras to keep the family comfortable, all while tearing up the backyard searching for a body. It is a classic police tactic designed to keep prime suspects calm so they don't lawyer up and stop singing. The cops know exactly who their guy is, and that empty septic tank proves it. They're letting the suspect think he's pulled one over on them while they quietly stack up the forensic proof to put him away for good. What's your take on this strategy? If you were watching the police pump your sewage tank while you told the world you were innocent, would you catch on that they were silently building a murder rap against you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now, this matters because everyone watching this case unfold live is wondering the very same thing. If the description fits so well, and the timeline points straight at the son-in-law, why isn't Tommaso Cioni currently sitting behind bars in a pair of cold steel bracelets? That is the most aggravating part of following a true crime story in real time. We watch the puzzle pieces snap together on our screens and expect the cops to bust down a door immediately. But the reality of the legal system is way messier than our internet sleuthing, connecting the dots. No matter how smart or convincing it looks to us, is absolutely not the same as having undeniable physical evidence for court. A can't just stroll into a courtroom and tell a jury the suspect looks like the guy on the security tape. They need solid, irrefutable proof. If the police collar him too early based purely on a hunch and a matching backpack, a slick defense attorney will manufacture reasonable doubt, and a guilty man could walk free forever. They get exactly one bite at the apple in a murder trial, and they can't afford to miss. That is precisely why the police are keeping this agonizing silence. They aren't ignoring Tommaso. They are actively building a massive digital dossier on him in the background. We are living in an age where it is virtually impossible to commit a crime without leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs. Investigators are fighting a cyber battle right now. They need to scrub the GPS history buried deep inside the computer of Tommaso's vehicle. They need to pinpoint exactly where that car was during that terrifying 4-hour gap between 9:50 p.m. and 1:47 a.m. Was the ignition triggered? Plus, they're tearing into his mobile network history. They need to pull the cell tower logs to verify his alibi. If he claims he was out cold in his own bed at 1:47 in the morning, his mobile device better show it was sitting still on his home Wi-Fi, not pinging a tower 3 miles out near Nancy Guthrie's place. Every modern car is basically a computer on wheels, constantly logging speed, braking habits, and exact coordinates. Did he sync his phone to the car's Bluetooth system during those missing hours? These silent logs don't lie, and you can't intimidate them on the witness stand. At this point, I started questioning the speed of the whole inquiry. And then I remembered another huge twist in this case. Think about the arrest of Derek Kella, that con artist out of California who tried to shake down the family by posing as the kidnapper. The Bureau hunted him down and had him in cuffs before he could blink. That bust went down with lightning speed, which really makes you think. It shows without a doubt that the feds have a total chokehold on the electronic data in this investigation. They possess the gear and the clearance to track a phone signal across state borders in just a few hours. So if they can strike that fast, why are they taking their sweet time with the relatives right here in town? The reason is smart, but it's also pretty scary. Staying mum about Tommaso means they aren't just hunting for one stray text, they are holding out for the lab results on a massive heap of digital files. We're talking about terabytes of raw data, scraped from internet providers, car computers, and secure chat apps. Scrubbing all that digital proof so it stands up in court can take months, maybe even a whole year. They're dragging a huge net to catch a tiny glitch, like a wiped search on how to get rid of a corpse, a throwaway phone bought weeks ago, or some weird bank transfer that doesn't add up. They are quietly building a virtual cell so tight that when the door slams, neither he nor his buddies will have room to spin a lie. They want the guy to feel that. Invisible noose tightening every day until his digital trail forces him to talk, which suggests we're looking at the worst possible ending. We have a clear money trail leading straight to a $2 million fortune. We have a creepy 4-hour blackout where the house sat dead quiet in the freezing cold. We have a crime scene that looks like a sloppy, amateur setup meant to throw the real detectives off the scent. And most damning of all, we have a main suspect on tape wearing a specific hiking pack, with a face and build that perfectly match the son-in-law. All signs point to an inside job. When I look at the big picture, I don't think the cops are stumped at all. They are simply taking their time, setting complex legal snares all around him. They know time is a guilty man's worst nightmare. Every day that goes by without an arrest is a long, grueling wait where the killer wakes up sweating, wondering if today is the day the feds come knocking. The cops are playing the long game, letting the pressure cook, waiting for the paranoid suspect to slip up, maybe whisper to a partner in the dark, or check his phone one time too many. That silence from the sheriff? It's a calculated mind game. It tricks the guilty party into thinking they're safe while the digital dragnet closes in. The investigators don't need a quick and dirty confession right now. They are waiting for an avalanche of hard facts. They want the tower pings, the global positioning system logs from the car, and that hidden browsing history. They are bricking up a wall of evidence so thick no pricey lawyer could ever smash through it. When you look at the board, from the blood on the deck to the empty septic tank, you can see the walls caving in on whoever did this awful thing. This case teaches us a bone-chilling lesson about trust, family lies, and safety at home. We spend our lives locking deadbolts and checking alarms to keep the monsters out. We are raised to fear the creeper in the alley or the predator stalking the block. But sometimes the real danger isn't a faceless stranger on the street at night. Sometimes the inescapable threat is sitting right there on your couch. It is hiding at the dinner table, masked by the cozy vibe of family duty and peaceful meals. It makes you sick to realize the hands serving you dinner could be the same ones counting up your life insurance money. If the desert dumping theory is right, and this cold-hearted killer really dragged an 84-year-old woman into the wild, which specific bit of digital proof do you honestly think will be the final straw that makes him crack? Is it going to be the GPS data that finally proves the car ventured out into the rocky Badlands? Could it be the wiped browser history revealing a desperate search for ways to stage a perfect murder? Or maybe the phone records pinging a tower they had no business being near at the worst possible time? Let's talk about it together in the comments section below. I really want to hear your take on which slip-up is going to make this whole house of cards come tumbling down. We are all just sitting here, waiting for that final domino to fall. Maybe in a few weeks, a grand jury indictment will finally hit the headlines, delivering the justice this heartbroken family has been waiting for. Or the reality might be much bleaker. It is possible the vast Arizona desert will just swallow the truth whole, burying those dark secrets under miles of sun-baked sand and stone. We might never uncover the exact timeline of what ended Nancy Guthrie's life on that freezing night in January. But when we shift our gaze from those happy family photos to the grainy security footage, one question lingers. When all is said and done, who is really wearing the mask? Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive. If you like digging into the darker side of these cases, hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. We spend our lives deadbolting doors and arming security systems, terrified of the monsters lurking in the dark. But the tragic story of Nancy Guthrie teaches us a chilling, heartbreaking truth. The most dangerous threats often have a key to the front door. Nancy's fate isn't just a gripping mystery. It is a devastating wake-up call about elder vulnerability in America. We often look at an 84-year-old living in $1 million home and assume they are perfectly safe, insulated by their wealth. But isolation is a silent predator. The grueling, unspoken toll of family caregiving can sometimes curdle into toxic resentment. When quiet desperation and sheer greed eclipse human compassion, a beloved grandmother stops being family and becomes nothing more than a pending payout. This tragedy demands that we look closer at our own lives. Are we truly showing up for the aging parents and grandparents who spent their lives raising us? Are we stepping in to help, or are we letting caregiver burnout silently destroy our families behind closed doors? True safety for our elders doesn't come from a high-tech alarm or a gated driveway. It comes from radical, vigilant love. It comes from paying attention to the quiet moments and refusing to let our most vulnerable loved ones fade into the shadows. Protect them. Cherish them. Because a family's love should never carry a price tag.